film those if he wants. And this is above all of them. Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Christian, doesn't matter. In this age, the glorification of God's names by melodious singing is the path recommended by Lord Chaitanya. So that kirtan this morning we just came from, I was thinking of that I just read this a few days ago, It's not so much the organizational or institutional approach that you must adhere to this or that, Singing the names of God with a humble heart in a way of glorifying Him is our religion, This is what Lord Chaitanya showed. Hello, friends and devotees. I'm the friend of Madhuha. My name is Nalini Kanta Das. I was initiated by Prabhupada in 1971 after joining with Krishna consciousness in late 1970. My past is ex-rock and roll singer, baseball player, went to college, joined the hippie movement, dropped out of college, and went looking for the truth or checking out different yoga systems, Sri Chinmoy, Yogi Bhajan, people like that, with my wife Ratna, and who we've been together 55 years now. And when we came to Krishna consciousness, we weren't staring at a candle and trying to understand absolute truth, And we weren't practicing silence like Pete Townsend preached, through Meher Baba or whatever. But we were invited to the temple in Washington, D.C., because I was singing at a peace rally there. And we loved the kirtan, we loved the food. We thought the devotees were a little unique. The temple was painted 15 different colors, psychedelic season of the late 60s. But from that time on, we started reading Prabhupada's books and chanting Hare Krishna. And within a few months, my whole life changed from, hippie, revolutionary, into, devotion to the holy name. Because the holy name really impacts us, as all of our readers or watchers may know, that there's power in the holy name. All the potencies of God are there. So we went out to meet Prabhupada once. We hitchhiked from the east coast of USA to San Francisco for the famous Rath Yatra festival. And we were staying at the temple in Berkeley. And Jayananda was the temple president. He's a famous devotee. And he took a liking to us, and we liked it there. And one day at lunchtime, Jayananda announced, everybody come around, there's a letter from Prabhupada. And so we were all sitting there, and Jayananda opens it up, and he says, oh, it's for that guy Tom that plays the guitar. I had written Prabhupada with, my ideas for music and song and everything. He wrote me back and said, just practice Krishna consciousness 24 hours a day. We have so many engagements. You can cook, you can clean, you can sell books, you can sing on the streets. 24-hour engagement in the service of Krishna. This music idea is not that important. So Jayananda took me upstairs and shaved my head, and I came down, and my wife saw me like that. We weren't married at the time, but she said, oh, my life has changed now. And we both moved into the Berkeley temple. It was a very wonderful temple at that time with Jayananda, and that's where big book distribution started, on the streets of Berkeley and San Francisco. So later on, I got Brahmin from initiation. I was always attached to Srila Prabhupada because right from the beginning, even though I was really a nobody, just an outside hippie, as a lot of us who joined the movement were, he was attached to me, and he cared about me enough to write a thank you note and talk to me personally. So later on, I got Brahmin from Srila Prabhupada, and while I was in traveling Sankirtan, got married in 74, moved to the LA temple in 78, spent 7 years there, and then came to Florida, and I've been here 40 years now. So that's my history. And when I when we were getting a little older and the householders were encouraged to get their own places or get their own jobs, I started with little jobs, and I had contact with a few astrologers who knew something about Jyotish. And there were 400 devotees in LA at the time, and they heard that I knew something about astrology. And so without even looking for it, they started coming to me asking, well, what do you know? And I started getting a reputation as an astrologer. And then it wasn't a full-time earning capacity like it's been for the last 35 years. But at that time, a friend of mine came up to me and asked me to write a book about Jyotish. And this is my first book called How to Read Your Horoscope. The basics of bona fide Hindu astrology. And I asked the publisher, well, how many are you going to print? He said 6,000. I said, 6,000 books in English on Indian astrology? How are we going to sell all those? They were gone within 3 months. The interest in Indian culture had begun in the 60s, and it was very, there were tens of thousands of people, millions of people who were becoming interested in the culture and religion of India. So 6,000 went very quickly. And when my book got published, it was one of the first 10 in the West that was available in English language on the science of Indian astrology. So I got a name, and I was invited to speak at different seminars and such. And my business grew, and I've been doing it every day, including today, today's 2 charts. And I've been, lucky to have a good service job where you help people with their lives and you get some compensation for it. We have a nice house and temple here in Alachua near the ISKCON temple. In 2001, I wrote a second book, The Divine Path of Prediction, which goes a little more in depth into Vedic astrology. And then this year, I just released this new book called Power Charts of the 20th Century. And it has descriptions of 50 different horoscopes of famous people, from all 4 Beatles to Bruce Lee to Grace Kelly to Franklin Delano Roosevelt to Adolf Hitler to Pablo Escobar to Henry Ford. And it teaches on a little bit more advanced level for those who are studying astrology or those who are interested in it, which it continually increases now. I mean, I get letters from people asking for a reading now where they don't know anything about Vedic astrology back in the 70s, but now they know, hey, what about my Navamsa chart? What about this sub-period? What's going to happen? What does the Panchang have to do with my life? These are details. And this new book, Power Charts of the 20th Century, and you see Srila Prabhupada front and center. His chart is in here as well. The designer of the book first had John Lennon there and no Prabhupada. And I said, no, this will not do. Prabhupada is radiant above all of these less important people of the 20th century. So there's commentary on Christian saints as well, Saint Bernadette of Lourdes, you've heard of maybe. And commentary on Einstein, Martin Luther King, JFK, where you get my take on what combinations or what arrangements in a chart can lead to the presidency and then to assassination, or to having an idea for an automobile, the most important, powerful automaker in American history, Henry Ford, and Albert Einstein and his science and how it deviated into a mass destruction device instead of something that could stop war. So this new book, Power Charts, is available on Amazon. Just type in Power Charts. It'll take you to my book. You can order it, get it overnight on Amazon if you're interested. But I do assure you that there's interesting writing in there from a person who's had more than 45 years experience of talking to people and reading their charts. And there's simple and detailed information for those who are practicing astrology where they could learn something from it. Let's just randomly open the book. Okay, I randomly open to George Harrison. Srila Prabhupada said when Srila Prabhupada was leaving his body in Vrindavan, he took off his ring and said to Guru Das, give this to George. He is my archangel. He's such an important preacher of Krishna consciousness. And he never joined the temple or shaved his head. They asked Prabhupada, should he have an initiated name? And Prabhupada said he already has one, Hari's son. Prabhupada was so quick in answering everything. I'm a talkative fellow, as you can tell, and even though I was never the GBC or temple president, they always used to ask me to come on the morning walk because I would talk and I'd get Prabhupada talking. Otherwise, he'd just walking with his cane on the beach in Santa Monica, or walking through the park by the Louvre in Paris, or walking down the road in Vrindavan. I was fortunate to be with him on at least 100 occasions, and I'm still very attached to him. Thank God, even though I'm attached to so many, even ungodly things, as most of us are. We are not completely transcendental to the bodily concept of life, I don't think. George Harrison has a combination where the ruler of the, here's an example of the teachings in the books. The ruler of the ascendant, the rising sign, the Lagna. His Lagna is Libra. This sign is ruled by Venus. Where does Venus go? This is step number 1 in Jyotish study or practice. Where does the Lord of the ascendant go? In other words, where do you, what is rising, your rising sign, what is rising for you in this life, where does that go? In his chart, it goes to its exaltation sign, exalted, its strongest sign position, Pisces. And it's Venus. So a strong Venus can make one a musician or a model or a diplomat or a sweet-talking person or a candy manufacturer or a car manufacturer. And his Venus is in the 6th house, which is the house of rendering service. He's the assistant. He was the third Beatle. He was not Lennon and McCartney. He was always given, one song on the Beatles albums until he put out his classic, All Things Must Pass. And people realized, wow, this guy is really more than we thought he was. And Harrison has Jupiter in the 9th house, which is a classic religious position. And he was very attached to Prabhupada. You know the story of the Krishna book? Should I tell that quickly? Okay. So Srila Prabhupada asked Shyamasundar to go ask George for a donation because Krishna book was ready to be published, but they needed $19,000 to print it. So Shyamasundar went over George's estate one night, and this is a funny story, and he kept hemming and hawing, and it was 9:30 at night, and George looked at his watch and said, well, it's getting late, I think we should wrap it up for tonight. And Shyama said, well, he was afraid to ask for the money. He never wanted to go to rich people to give them the idea that we want money from you. We want your bhakti. So Shyamasundar said, there's one more thing, George. And he said, okay, what is it? And Shyamasundar said, Prabhupada wanted me to ask you for a donation to help publish the Krishna book. George is silent. Shyamasundar shaking in his boots. Am I going to lose my good friend? Am I going to lose a great helper of the Krishna movement? And George said, how much do you need? 19,000 pounds or $19,000. And George goes quiet. Then suddenly there's a huge crack of lightning and thunder. And all the electricity goes out in the house. And a few minutes later, the lights come back on. And George says, well, I can't really argue with that now, can I? And he writes him a check. Like, this is, it's a funny story, but it's the magic of Krishna and Prabhupada working together to spread this movement everywhere. So you can find anything out in a horoscope because the horoscope actually depicts the wheel of time, the Kala Chakra. And the wheel of time is described in this Srimad Bhagavatam as indicating the actual will of God himself. The time factor is his instrument, and it's actually the universe, and the planets rotating within the universe. And Krishna speaks to Brahma, here's my instructions. Brahma speaks to his 9 planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu, and says, this is Krishna's order, carry it out. And that's what's in your birth horoscope, or the horoscope at the time of your question, your prashna to an astrologer. This is totally misunderstood by many, even devotees, that this is a karmic thing and you transcend all your karma. No, this is the actual will of God himself. Otherwise, why do Vyasadeva, Bhrigu, Narada, Shiva, why do they all study and know the intricacies of this science? They're not interested in material karma, because everything in the Vedas is really meant for our spiritual benefit, and it's indicative of the will of God himself. Then that may be a more conservative religious approach to astrology, but in my 50 years, over 50,000 horoscopes, I've seen it confirmed on so many occasions that I don't doubt that. I don't consider myself to be able to interpret the exact will of God, because Venus in Pisces in the 6th house may indicate so many things. Could indicate that you get a wife with a health problem. Could indicate that you buy a foreign car, for Venus's cars in the 6th house is foreign places. But to help people answer questions and give good advice to their patrons, these books are available. If you're interested, you can talk to me via nalinikanta.com or go to Amazon and buy this new book, Power Charts of the 20th Century. Go on, but if you watched this, thank you for listening, and hope if you're in the field of astrology that you'll pick up one of my books or just say hello. Prabhupada, Jayananda, me, Jagannath Swami, he's temple president of Berkeley still, Srila Prabhupada. They're in the New York temple. And at that time there was a group of actors.
Vaikuntha players?
Yeah, Vaikuntha players. And they put on a play for Prabhupada, The Kidnapping of Rukmini. And this is right after the play ended. And someone asked Prabhupada, did you like the play, Prabhupada? And he said, oh, it was better than the book. Hare Krishna. Of course, they're the greatest composers of all music. But when they found out what he could do, they said, wow, here comes the sun, something in the way she moves, my sweet Lord, Even Lennon and McCartney never made great songs like that,
Ooh, thank you.
Okay.